Hi, everybody. It's Randy Spivey from CPPS, and today I'd like to take just a couple minutes to talk about a few myths that we see happen related to workplace violence programs in the different organizations that we worked with over the years. The first myth is an idea that it just can't happen here. I remember in 2007, shortly after we launched our video called Shots Fired, which was the first program in the country on how to survive an active shooter situation. And I was talking with a woman from a large university on the East Coast and explaining the program. And it was shortly after Virginia Tech had happened. And she said, well, I'm sorry, thank you for calling, but we just don't have those happen here. And I said, what? And she goes, no, we don't have those here. And I thought to myself, I mean, I didn't want to argue with her, but we're seeing shootings happening in all kinds of different locations. And 15 years later, now 2023, in fact, the FBI just came out with a report talking about how much these shootings had increased in 2022. And in fact, now what do we see happen? We're seeing it happen not just in workplaces, not just in colleges and universities, but you're seeing them happen in churches or houses of worship, movie theaters, concerts. There's really no venue that is completely safe from these incidents of extreme violence. In fact, not too long ago, a small Christian elementary school, a former student came in and shot and killed a number of the staff and some others. And so there's really no place that this isn't just an inner city issue. It's happening everywhere. And there's no type of organization where you're immune from the extreme violence. And so the idea that it couldn't happen here, I mean, statistically, it's increasing in frequency and it's increasing in lethality, but it's not statistically real common, so it probably won't happen in your workplace, but it could. And so that's why it's important to take it seriously and say, we need to do what we can to prevent these things from happening. And even though active shooter incidents aren't extremely common, workplace violence itself, when you look at the broader definition, happens in organizations all the time. Well over 2 million reported incidents a year, and costing a lot of money, over $100 billion a year, well over $100 billion a year. So, it can happen and does happen in all different types of venues and organizations. A second myth, it'll just go away. Well, if you think about bullies, what do bullies do? They're pushing and they're pushing. And if nobody does anything, they push this far, they're going to push maybe a little bit farther. And what stops it is when somebody addresses it. And so what we know is that more often than not, if somebody is acting in ways that are inappropriate, saying things they shouldn't be saying, having outbursts within the organization, and creating just a toxic environment around them, you don't want to just say, well, that's just John, and he's a kind of a short-tempered guy, and well, it'll go away, or he'll be better tomorrow. What we know is that it tends to progress, and if left unaddressed, odds are it's not going to just simply go away. Sometimes it might, but more often than not, it won't. The last one, and this is kind of an interesting one, is that I've seen organizations, not very often, but occasionally they'll say, well, we'll take our chances. If we have to write, we don't want it to happen, and God forbid it does happen. And if it does, we'll write a check for a couple $1 million and then move on our way. Well, in fact, a number of years ago, a friend, colleague of mine, Roger Albers, and I were doing one of our high-risk travel courses. And we had an attorney from a multi-billion-dollar services company in the audience. And when we were all done doing the class, I sat down with him and said, what'd you think? He goes, it was great. I learned so much. We have so many people that could use this. He said, but we'll never do it. I looked at him, I said, what? And he goes, no, we'll never do it. He said, our mindset of our leadership is, if it happens, we'll just clean it up. And we'll take our chances. Well, that might work. By the way, that company, not too long after this, the company filed for bankruptcy, multi-billion-dollar services company. But, maybe in the past, $3-4 million would have been the result of a workplace homicide. But now, I think if you look at what's happening is, and part of it is because of the increased frequency and I think a desperation on people wanting to be able to do something. And so when these incidents occur, and if there's any kind of negligence or lack of duty of care, compliance, we're seeing the settlements and the payouts, and sometimes it's actually jury and judge awards on these incidents that are $50 million, $100 million. There was one with Spectrum TV that was over $1 billion. Yeah, the jury actually recommended $7 billion. They negotiated it down, and the judge said, no, that's excessive. And so it was like $1.1 billion. The horrible shooting at Uvalde, Texas, the elementary school. There are multiple lawsuits that have been filed so far. One of them, just one class action suit, it was $26 billion. Now, we'll see what that actually comes out to be, but this is no longer just a $2-3 million risk that organizations are taking if they have an incident, and particularly if they didn't have a program in place. And with OSHA saying this is a foreseeable risk as part of the general duty clause, you need to have a comprehensive workplace violence prevention program in place. One of the things that we've done over the last several years to help organizations in this area is introduce a program called the Safe Workplace Certification. And the Safe Workplace Certification is a third-party certification that says, what it doesn't say is you could never have an incident if you have the certification. But it does say that we've come along as a third-party outside source and looked at your program, did an assessment on it, looked at your policies, helped you develop them, and then have all the different layers of training that are needed in the area of prevention of violence and threat assessment, according to the ASIS international ANSI standard. So when I've been involved in court cases where an incident did happen and there was a workplace homicide, and I was sitting there being deposed and the attorneys are going through that document to assess what that organization should have had in place. And they didn't have it. And it turned out to be pretty expensive for the organization. That was many years ago. So the trend, though, now is tens and hundreds of $1 million, and occasionally over into the billion range. So, and not many organizations, I don't think, are prepared to just write that off. So if you want to know more about the Safe Workplace Certification, reach out to us at info@cpps.com. And we'll be happy to help you put that together. All right, stay safe. Thank you.